Welcome to Flunking the Written, a fully spoiled Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast in which two Uber fans break down every episode of the show. Join Kimberly and Megan every Tuesday as they overanalyze each scene and discuss the Buffyverse at large. Now let's meet up with the Scoobies and get into this week's episode of Flunking the Written.
What can I say? I flunked the written.
Season 2, we've made it. We are here for When She Was Bad. And before we start talking about this specific episode, I just want to take just a quick second to talk about Season 2, because Season 2 is definitely in my top 3. It flips back and forth. It's either my second favorite or third favorite, depending on, when you catch me. But there's a lot that isn't great about Season 2, and I'll acknowledge that as we go through it. But I think for me, Season 2, and I mentioned it being like the most Buffy season, it just has the most iconic story arc for the second half. And anytime I think of Buffy, I automatically start thinking about Season 2. Like, it's that iconic to the show for me.
When I think about Buffy, I'm usually in Season 2 or 3. Season 2 is in my top 3, but it's the third one.
Okay.
Mine goes Season 3, Season 6, Season 2.
Okay.
Season 3 is my absolute favorite.
Yeah. I'm Season 5, and then Season 6 and Season 2, are wrestling for second and third for me.
Mine is Season 3 just because I'm a huge Faith fan.
Yeah.
And then also my favorite episode of the whole series is in Season 3. So that makes it the plus for me. Mm-hmm. And then 6 and then 2. But 2 is, it's one of my favorite seasons.
Yeah, it's so good, and I'm so excited to start discussing it. And we're going to start with the very first episode, When She Was Bad, which of course was written and directed by Joss Whedon. And the blurb is, Buffy returns from summer vacation with a, in quotes, major attitude and recurring nightmares involving the Master, even as the Anointed One and his followers plot their revenge. She got that major attitude.
Yeah. For issues.
She's got some issues she's working through. Something else to note is this is the first episode that is scored by Christoph Beck, which, since I've been talking about music, I felt like I needed to mention, because so many of the iconic Buffy the Vampire Slayer themes that we recognize in the show were composed by Christoph Beck, and this is his introductory episode.
One thing I noticed in this episode is that in Season 1, we get a lot of Buffy struggling to do physical things. Like, she fights a lot of bad guys, but she always has trouble at first. Mm-hmm. And she has trouble opening things or getting out of places. And there's always a lot of strain on her face. Like when she's trying to get out the trapdoor and open it, or trying to push something in front of something, And this episode, that has gone. That's just disappeared. Buffy is a badass.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I'm not saying that she doesn't still have trouble with stuff, obviously, because she does. But when she fights, she's more of a superhero. Yeah. It's like they kicked it up a notch for Season 2.
Yeah. There's also there's just a little bit of a tonal shift that I really appreciate. I also like, because we talk about in Season 1 several times that there's a hard reset at the end of the episode, and things like her just seemingly forgetting Owen's existence after that episode, or things like that. Mm-hmm. This episode directly follows up from Prophecy Girl. So it's so intertwined, and it really feels like
a series.
Yeah, it feels like a series again. And
Season 2 is also when we get storylines that go throughout the season. Mm-hmm. More than we had the Master in Season 1, obviously, but they kicked that up a notch too in Season 2, where the episodes in a season are more connected.
So mine opened up with the last season on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I was watching the DVD. I'm not sure what version you're watching.
I have all the DVDs, but I actually have been watching on Hulu.
Okay, so I'm glad that they included that on the Hulu as well, because I always appreciate that kind of stuff. But we have a lovely recap of Season 1 that really, again, shows how connected this episode is to what came before. Mm-hmm. And then we start with Willow and Xander walking very casually right next to a graveyard, which I think indicates
it's all kinds of in my notes. Like, don't they know better than this by now?
But they've talked about how slow the summer has been. I think it's supposed to be there to indicate something about how the summer's not really been that dangerous.
Yeah, I get that. And they mentioned that more than once. But if I had gone through something like that when I was 16, when I was like 65, I would still not walk by a graveyard at night. And like, it's just the summer for them. Like, why they're still doing this, and they know the people that the creatures still exist, even if they haven't seen them. I think that would be like a life lesson.
They're young; they can live forever. They're in that immortal age. Nothing could possibly kill them. But yeah, they're playing a very cute game of guessing movies based on quotes.
It's a madhouse.
Planet of the Apes.
Can I finish, please?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
House.
Planet of the Apes.
At one point, Willow says it's a dumb game anyway when she can't think of a very good movie to reference. And then Xander says, well, we've already played rock, paper, scissors. And I just have in my notes, what 16-year-olds play rock, paper, scissors?
Yeah. My 7-year-old really likes to play it, but, they must be incredibly bored.
They played it long enough for his hand to cramp up. I mean, they spent a long time playing rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very, very bored.
Yeah, but then they also talk about Buffy being gone for the summer and not really hearing from her except for a couple of postcards, to which I have in my notes, what 16-year-old sends postcards?
Yeah, because even in like 1997, 1998, who sent postcards?
Yeah.
Like, I could see her writing a letter, maybe, but an email. I don't know. Postcard did seem weird. And then they kind of have a moment.
They definitely kind of have a moment.
Mm-hmm. They do it really well and almost kiss. Mm-hmm. And then there's the vampire.
Yes.
Which, again, makes sense because they're in Sunnydale at a graveyard at night. And Xander here, he, pushes Willow out of the way and tells her to run and turns around to fight the vampire.
Yeah.
So he's trying to protect Willow. And then we see a hand grab the vampire and start to fight him and kick him, and then pushes him into a tree branch where he turns into dust, and it's Buffy, and she's back.
Buffy!
So yay, Buffy. And then we have the theme song.
Which now features David Boreanaz. And then we come back and we have Xander hug, Willow hug, Xander hug. And they explain that, they were sloppy, but that was the first vampire that they've seen since she killed the master. And she has the comment, it's like they knew I was coming. Which again, like, I have a hard time believing that vampires just stop hanging out in Sunnydale if Buffy's not around.
I mean, you would think that's when they would hang out in Sunnydale.
Yeah, and it, like, directly contradicts this idea in season 6 where they're trying so hard with the Buffy bot to convince every vampire and demon in the area that Buffy's still alive because of the chaos that would ensue if she wasn't around.
Yes, and I agree 100% that, yes, that makes sense, but I don't think that Buffy actually thinks that they weren't around because she wasn't there.
Yeah.
I think this is her first comment that shows something's wrong. Mm-hmm. Because she looks kind of really upset when she says it.
Yeah. I definitely have, like, the first for sure sign is when they talk about where the master was buried, and she's very visibly, like,
upset.
It's that same kind of thing that she had at the end of the Prophecy Girl, where she couldn't stop staring at the master bones. Here she can't stop staring towards the grave. She's just so drawn and like obsessed with what had happened between them, and she's still wrestling with that. And I really love the way that this all handles the repercussions of what it's like to go through what Buffy's gone through.
Yeah. And Willow tells her about the ceremony they had when they buried the master, and then ask if she's seen Giles, which then we get another clue that she might not be quite all right, because she says, why would I call Giles? Mm-hmm. It surprises me that Giles was not in contact with her all summer.
Yeah.
Like, do Watchers just let their Slayer leave for a couple of months?
Yeah, there's a couple of like notes that I
Yeah.
have in regards to that. But I think what really like stood out to me is because we talked so much about season 1 and how close Buffy and Giles had gotten, and that's like the relationship of season 1 for me is the developing father-daughter relationship there. That this, more than anything, her not really caring to see Giles at all just really hits hard after everything that they went through in Prophecy Girl together. Because, yeah, some months have passed, but for us watching it the way we're watching it and seeing just how stark that juxtaposition is from them willing to die for each other in that episode to her just being like, why would I even want to see him? I think it's really hard for me.
Then there's a scene with her parents where they are unpacking her clothes and shoes, and they have a long conversation about how much her dad bought her and how he wasn't able to connect with her over the summer.
Yeah.
And Joyce has a comment where she says, I'll just be happy if she makes it through the school year.
So close.
Which a little bit of foreshadowing there.
So close.
Yeah.
I really wish we had more of this version of Hank. Like, I really just think that this is wholesome and sweet. Just feels like actual, genuine parents just trying their best and not really sure what to do. It's a nice scene. It's one of the few times that we see actual Hank. And after this, it's no more. Like, any version of Hank we see after this is some kind of memory or alternate reality. This is the last that we see of true Hank. So, it was nice knowing you, Hank.
Yeah, he kind of becomes a deadbeat father after this, doesn't he? Especially in season 6. But they're getting along here too, Joyce and Hank.
Yeah, it seems like a real like amicable separation and everything like that. Like it seems very adult and understanding.
Then we open with the first day of school and lots of kids, and we have Cordelia, and Cordelia has a lot in this episode. And she's talking about how she didn't get the vacation she wanted over the summer. Very Cordelia-like. And then we have Giles and Mr. Snyder talking about the children and the students, and here comes Jenny. And Jenny and Giles have a talk with some flirting about what they did over the summer and stuff. Is there anything in these little opening scenes that you...
All of this is really just good to kind of establish everybody, all the characters again for just sake of you got to establish all of the characters. But what I absolutely adore is anytime that we have Giles and Snyder together. Everything about those two together, and we get a couple of scenes from them in this episode, and they're both just fantastic. Snyder comparing the students to locusts is always one of my favorite things. And then, of course, the beautiful talking about them being hormonal time bombs as Jenny and Giles just flirt, like just uncontrollably in the background, like cannot be around each other without just blushing and giggling, and it's just so cute, and it just makes me have the biggest grin on my face whenever I see it.
They have some good dialogue in all those interactions. They're pretty funny, and it's kind of reminding us of all the characters. And then Xander, Willow, and Buffy approach Giles, which Xander attempts to give Giles the nickname of G-Man, which Giles is not into at all.
This is another like moment where, you know, Buffy's acting weird and very kind of uncomfortable in an area that she should be. I mean, this is all her family, basically. But there's this lovely moment where Giles sees Buffy and you can just see like just that warmth that he has for her. And he even offers to allow Buffy to have a few days before training. But she insists that she's ready. Which, again, like, I'm kind of with you. It seems weird that he didn't have more interaction with her over the summer to make sure that she was doing something. But at the same time...
okay.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think after the Master was dead and that threat was dealt with, and Buffy had gone through what she had gone through, I could see a reality where Giles would pull way back on the slaying for a while and just let her recover from that.
Right, but he could, still check on her and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Like, there's a lot, like, the fact that everybody kind of just accepts that Buffy's not interacting with them over the summer and then thinks it's weird that she comes back and is like, her personality is different. I'm just like, well, wouldn't you expect that if she didn't communicate with you at all over the summer? I mean, I would be prepared for that.
But yeah, she's very standoffish here. Mm-hmm. And then Jenny makes a comment that I find very odd, where she says, "We got vampires? I thought the Hellmouth was closed." Well, Jenny knows about vampires. Jenny is there for a specific reason concerning vampires.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess this is maybe to keep her cover or something, but it just feels weird.
Yeah.
There's other moments like this with Jenny too. I'm watching Jenny very close.
I'm watching you, Jenny. What is the Hellmouth really? Like, what levels of closed and open does it have? Because even closed, the Hellmouth still has some effect on the area around it. But, like, I always just assumed that when it's open, it's more of, like, a dimensional gateway thing than it is, like, anything more magical. I think it's always kind of magical, but then when it's open, it's, like, a gateway to another dimension, allowing the demons to cross over directly rather than just seep through as like mystical energy. The idea of the Hellmouth being closed is always one of those things that every now and again creeps up, but I'm not sure if you can ever truly say that it's closed until maybe like the very end of the series, because I think no matter what, there is an effect that it has, a mystical energy that comes from it that causes things to happen all around Sunnydale.
I agree. And it's kind of like a low hum in the background.
Yeah. It really is. I'm going to compare it to zombies, and I know you hate zombies. But it's kind of like zombies pushing at a door, right? I mean, that's what it's like. The other side of the Hellmouth, there's so much demonic energy pushing at the Hellmouth at all time that inevitably some of it gets through.
Right. And so the next scene we have is a mini training montage of Buffy training and Giles watching. And while he's watching, and you can tell he is somewhat concerned about her.
Yeah.
Just because of the changes on his face while she's watching, because she gets pretty intense. And he tells her, you know, it's okay to stop. That's enough. Stop. And then she breaks the wood of the little mannequin thing she's training with.
What I'll say is that on top of like him being very observant and really attuned to Buffy's mental state, props to Giles for like holding his own when Buffy was just wailing on him. Like he took a lot of hits, and he's got pads and all of that stuff, but he took a lot of hits before he finally went down, and I'm just like, dang, Giles.
Yeah. My thing here is at the end of this scene when Buffy breaks the wood and she's like, I'm ready for whatever's coming next. I feel like Giles should have been more concerned here.
Yeah.
Like, this is his Slayer. She is obviously dealing with some emotional trauma, and it ends.
Yeah.
We don't get him to see him try to like confront her or help her or anything.
Yeah.
And then later, he doesn't even really act like there's anything, you know, like big to be concerned about.
Yeah, like I said, like I feel like there's a lot of weirdness about the way that everybody reacts to Buffy in this episode. Like, I feel like Buffy herself makes total sense, but I feel like a lot of the way that the other characters engage with Buffy doesn't make sense, especially considering how close all of these people were, and then this idea of them being apart for an entire summer and not really communicating at all over the summer. It just seems weird. Like, it seems like that would have been a huge red flag for all of those characters, that Buffy's going through some stuff, and then she comes back and starts acting weird, and it still takes them a long time to really start accepting that, yeah, Buffy's struggling. I really like this episode, and I enjoyed the Buffy stuff and really like the direction that they took all of that. But I feel like it is an incredibly strong episode for Buffy, and in some ways a strong episode for Angel, and then the rest of the cast I'm kind of just like, and they're there too.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with that. They're just, I don't understand why people aren't trying to help Buffy. Like, eventually, about halfway through the episode, they start discussing how, hey, she's not herself, which I personally feel like they should have noticed sooner, especially Giles. But no one actually tries to help her. Mm-hmm. And then Xander turns on her.
Yeah.
Which I really, and I know I'm usually the one defending Xander, but I'll have some stuff to say when we get to that, because I do not like that part. But okay, the next scene is at the factory, which there'll be a lot of stuff at the factory.
Yeah.
This is our first glimpse of it. And then we have a vampire who seems to be in charge, and the anointed one, and then some like minion vampires. And the one in charge, the script book says his name is Absalom.
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 Huh.
And he gives a speech about how they're going to rise with him. He will show them the way, and all, classic vampire speech.
I enjoy Absalom a lot. He's very theatrical, and
yes,
it's just a gem to watch. Like his reaction at the end of the episode when Buffy shows up, it's just the funniest, most over-the-top thing, and I love it. But yeah, the Anointed One is the big vamp in town right now. Figuratively, literally, he's actually still quite little. But yeah, and that's just setting that up. And then we cut to another new set, which is the lounge area of Sunnydale High, which is another area we will revisit several times.
We'll see that a lot, yeah.
And we have Xander and Willow come up, and I mean, it's so weird because it's all in a dream, but like it makes me like interpret like Buffy's subconscious of these characters. And
well, yeah, and this dream is not subtle.
Yeah, and the fact
about anything.
Yeah, and the fact that, like, Willow and Xander kind of have this way of communicating without communicating. And then, of course, you go into this idea of Willow still having the crush on Xander and being awkward about it. And it builds those layers. But the biggest clue that this is a dream, before we ever get to the point of Giles attacking and stuff like that, is Buffy is incredibly, like, level-headed all of the sudden versus the weird standoffish, like, uncomfortable that she's been. She's very level-headed, and this Giles comes up, and Buffy's just like, it's okay, we can take care of it. And then Giles attacks, and she removes his mask, and it is actually the Master. I want to go back to this idea that Giles is the one that reveals to Buffy that she is going to die at the hands of the Master, and how fitting it is that in this dream she removes Giles's mask and it's actually the Master. And I think that there's something about like that anger that she had in that moment, the flinging books at Giles moment, is something that still rests in her subconscious. That Giles was the one to deliver that news is something that she's still dealing with.
Yes. And this dream I feel like it shows us where Buffy is at with everybody. Because we have Giles come in where they're all sitting there and tell her about new vampire activity. And she says, trust me, we can deal. And Giles says, I don't know. I mean, I killed you once. It shouldn't be too difficult to do it again. And then attacks her. And Giles is strangling Buffy on the table while Willow and Xander just watch.
Yes.
And like, I see where obviously she blames Giles somewhat. Possibly even for, being her watcher. And it feels like it's partially his responsibility or his fault that she died. But then we also see where she feels like Xander and Willow did nothing. They didn't help her. They're not helping her now. They're just sitting there being Xander and Willow.
Yeah.
All, telepathic with each other.
And it continues to play off of a theme that we're going to deal with throughout all of Buffy, which is that isolation that Buffy has in being the Slayer. And it's something we've talked about a little bit already, and we'll continue to talk about a lot as the series progresses, but that there's something about Buffy's responsibility that makes it impossible to truly connect with Xander and Willow, and that disconnect is something that
we see a lot of.
Yeah, we see a lot of this idea of she can't truly be one of the gang the same way that Xander could or Willow could, because she's got the weight of the world on her shoulders. But yeah, then Buffy wakes up and Angel is just chilling.
Her room, a little bit stalker-like.
But yeah, he's just there and does the season 1 Angel bit of, hey, there's something dangerous going on. You should be wary. And I'm just like, aren't we over this at this point?
I think this is the last one of these.
Buffy is incredibly antagonistic.
Yes.
Angel. Like the most aggressive that she's been with anybody.
So is this a social call? It is kind of late. Or, well, it is for me anyway. But is it for you, lunch hour?
It's not a social call.
Ah, so let me guess, that means grave danger. Gosh, it's good to be home.
I'm sorry. I wish I had better news.
So, some of your cousins are in town for a family barbecue, and we're all on the menu.
The Anointed One. He's been gathering forces somewhere in town. I'm not sure why.
Guess I'll find out soon enough, huh?
You don't sound too concerned.
I can handle myself. Besides, I could use a little action anyway.
Don't underestimate the Anointed One just because he looks like a child. He has power over the rest of them. They'll do anything for him.
Is that it? Is that everything? You know, because you woke me up from a really good dream.
Which kind of says something, because aren't people as a whole, we're usually like that with the people that we know will take it more because they care about us more.
Yeah.
And it kind of tells me she knows that Angel cares about her, and she cares about him too. It's kind of like, as a mom, my kids are, when they're with someone else, are more well behaved, and when they come home to me, they act up more, have more tantrums and stuff, because they know I love them, I care about them. That's their safe spot, and it kind of shows me that this is her a safe zone for her with Angel. And she knows that because she is like the most bitchy here with Angel. And he warns her about the vampires and the Anointed One and what they're planning to do, or that they're planning something.
Very specific in his warnings.
Yes.
It's like Angel's just like, hey, Buffy, by the way, vampires are a thing. Just thought you should know.
Yeah.
Thanks, Angel.
She rolls over in bed to ignore him, after their conversation, and he turns to leave and he says, I missed you. And then she starts to say, I missed you too, and he turns over and he's gone.
Yeah. So we have a song here playing in the background. It's It Doesn't Matter by Alison Krauss and Union Station. But here's my thing. This scene is gotta be out of order, isn't it? I don't know if it's like how it's done in the script, but this is the outfit that Buffy wears at the very end of the episode when she's in the car with Joyce here.
And very, very observant, because it is.
Okay, cool. I win. So when was this initially supposed to come? Like what after what scene?
It is after she goes to the graveyard and sees that the Master's bones are gone.
Yeah,
right
that makes
after
more sense.
that is the scene with her and her mom in the car when she finds the Master's grave is empty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the next scene is Buffy and her mom in the car, and Buffy doesn't really say a single word during that scene.
Yeah.
It's just Joyce kind of trying to get through to her because she realizes something's wrong. She has no idea of the massive amount of wrong in her daughter's life, but she knows something isn't right.
Yeah. In a weird way, even though we know what Buffy's actually like going through and how severe it is and how much more it is than what typical teenage girls go through, there's a lot about Buffy in this episode that just seems like a typical teenage girl response. I mean, completely ignoring your parents' concern and not wanting to talk to them. And just giving that cold shoulder is definitely a teenage girl tactic. And Buffy uses it quite well.
So then we move to Buffy and Willow and Xander talking in the halls at school by the lockers. They're discussing Angel and if there was kissing or groping or whatever. And Buffy's just like, yeah, something's up. Nothing I can't handle, but, just one of those warnings. Yeah. And they talk about going to the Bronze that night, and Cordelia comes up. And Cordelia's not quite as much Cordelia as she normally is during this scene. Cordelia asks them if they fought demons all summer, and they're like, hey, we don't talk about that with people. And
yeah, and then they're like, you haven't been telling everybody, and she's just like, no, I wouldn't want people knowing that I spent the evening with you, but she like willingly approaches them in the hallway, in the middle of school. Like, she started the conversation with these three. She was the initiator there.
She kind of assures Buffy that she will not share her secret with anybody, that she'll keep it quiet, and Buffy calls her a moron.
Yep. And then I feel like the first true, like, moment where the Scoobies are just like, what's going on with Buffy? And I'm just like, I feel like Buffy, this isn't the thing that would have triggered me on Buffy.
No. Yeah, they all stand around looking concerned. What's wrong with Buffy? And
she insulted Cordelia. the precious
it really
child.
looks on their faces. And I'm just like, that wasn't really that big a deal. But they act like it's, the end of the world. And the next scene, we have the Bronze, and Willow and Xander are talking, and Willow is basically discussing Buffy and how she thinks something is wrong.
Yes.
And I have in my notes here, it's like, it's about time somebody noticed. And wants to do something. And Willow basically says Buffy's never been mean before, which is true. And Willow tries to recreate the fun they were having in the graveyard before Buffy came back. And Xander he is just too obsessed with finding out where Buffy is and doesn't really engage. And you just feel so bad for her. It's just like, ouch.
Yeah, it's just the worst. The tradition of Xander only being interested in Willow when Buffy's not around or when Buffy's rejected him really is the worst. And gosh, I'm ready to get a little further along in season 2 so we can get away from some of this.
Yeah.
We cut to the graveyard, and we have a group of vampires led by the Anointed One digging up the Master's grave. And this is, I think, one of the best Anointed One scenes, because, like, I really just think that this is genuinely creepy. He's just so little. He's so little. All of those vampires around, and he's so little, and yet he commands them to dig.
Charge,
yeah, he commands them to dig through consecrated ground, and they just do. And I'm just like, he's just the cutest little vampire that's just gonna murder everybody, and I'm just like, aw.
I would like to point out here that Giles did not bury the Master very deep. Like, we're like 2 inches into the ground when they find Master Skull. Like, what is that? Like, a heavy rain could have uncovered these bones.
Well, fortunately, they live in California, so.
Well, I'm just saying. Okay, a windstorm could have uncovered these bones. It's just like they are like immediately under the surface. I feel like that was a little short-sighted on Giles's part to bury him so shallow in such shallow ground, you know. But then we go back to the Bronze, and Buffy comes in.
With the beautiful Sugar Water being played by Cibo Matto, and oh my god, everything about this scene just shows how Buffy knows to get results.
Yeah.
She's just like, I want to do one thing that's gonna make everybody around me super pissed off. Got it. Done.
Pretty much. This is everybody I know is in this scene is going to be upset with me.
Yeah.
And I guess because she's so angry and scared, and she just wants to make everybody else feel that way too. But she runs into Angel first, who... Now,
go
ahead.
She runs into Angel, sure. But Angel, I think, actually, like, breaks his neck a little bit when he spins his head so fast when Buffy enters the room. I'm just like, how do you not have whiplash, sir? I mean, I know you're a vampire, but that was severe.
Which, obviously, he was waiting for her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they start talking, and he says that can't help thinking that he's made her mad. And it bothers him. And she's like, I'm not. I don't know where that comes from. Even though, obviously, she is mad. She's mad at everybody.
Yeah.
And she tells him, she's moved on to the living and, whatever. And walks away.
And you have this lovely moment of Cordelia just being super observant.
Yes. And these next few scenes are like when I first started to like Cordelia.
Yeah. It feels weird. Like, Cordelia does kind of feel a little bit like she's progressed a little bit too much at this point. But this feels like something that Cordelia innately has that she doesn't always use or doesn't always recognize, but is something that definitely helps her later on when she has, like, the visions and things like that. That Cordelia is so empathetic. And to be kind of the one who's the most in tuned to what Buffy's feeling and just and like gives the advice that's very Cordelia of getting over it a little later on. But like she understands something about what's going on here. Like she understands what it is to be a bitch. And it's just like she's observing it and like understanding what's going on more so than I think any other of Buffy's friends are.
Yes.
And then Xander finally gets his dance.
Yeah, she grabs Xander's hand and asks if he, or says, let's dance. And just a very cringe scene where Buffy's incredibly sexy, but it just feels wrong.
Yeah.
Like the entire scene feels wrong.
Oh, it's so
And
good.
Xander,
it
is
so good.
Xander's just kind of, he doesn't even move. He's just standing there like
Petrified.
he has no idea what's going on what to do.
Yeah.
Where then Buffy does this incredibly sexy dance all around Xander for this song, and it's a little much. It's way too much. Not a little. It's way too much. And at the end, we see Cordelia watching this, we see Xander watching this, we see Angel watching this, and none of them look happy. And Willow, I honestly think that this is possibly more cruel to Willow than it is to Xander.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just, I actually, when I watched this scene, I think Willow should look more upset.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's the shock of it, really. Like, that's, like, something just... And, I mean, they immediately go to this idea that she's possessed. Like, it doesn't feel like Buffy. But I love that it is. I love that it's just her dealing with this. I love that they did this. And I love that they deal with the consequences of what she has been dealing with. And it's one thing to be the Slayer and understand the life and death aspects of it. It's another thing to actually experience that. And that's what Buffy has. Like, Buffy has experienced truly what her being a Slayer means. And in a lot of ways, this lines up really well with The Wish. And the path that she went down on The Wish, where she was very isolated and did kind of like push everyone away and retreat into herself, and she was just very angry in The Wish. It lines up very well with season 6 and like the struggles to come back to life that she had to do in season 6, and that took her an entire season to get over that life and death experience. And it's just, I love that all kind of ties together, and you have this moment here where Buffy just makes terrible decisions just to get a reaction. And that's what this scene really feels like. Like, she wants to prove a point, even if she doesn't really know what that point is.
She has some very passive-aggressive words for Xander here, where she's, Xander, did I ever thank you for saving my life? And Xander just still has no idea what's going on and just seems afraid to move. And he goes, no. She leans up and whispers in his ear, don't you wish I would? And then just walks out. She just walks out. She walks past Xander, Cordelia, Willow, and Angel. And I find unbelievably cruel that she does this and just walks past her best friend without a word. Like, Buffy is in pain here.
Yeah.
And possibly if any of her friends had tried to help her before this, in the last few days, maybe it wouldn't have happened, Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not saying she's not responsible for her own actions, but also she's just been getting madder and madder.
Yeah.
And it's got to come to the surface.
Yeah. And truly, I feel like at this point, Angel's made the biggest effort to even just try to get through to her and be like, you're angry, I can tell, and but the truth of the matter is this is so unlike Buffy that it takes them longer to notice, which is kind of a weird thing that happens when somebody acts so different than who they are. You kind of, I think you get into this weird headspace where you're just like, I'm just imagining it, because that can't be Buffy, right? That can't be Buffy. And it takes something like this that's so aggressive, and so there's no other way to interpret this, that leads them again to recognize that something's going on, but they're still not willing to accept that this is Buffy. And Willow's like, she's got to be possessed. Like, that's the only way that this could possibly be Buffy. And it's kind of weird because we have the hyena episode, which I've talked about to death. But is it because of the hyena episode that Willow thinks that Buffy's possessed? Or is it just a super big inconsistency that it took them so long to realize that Xander was possessed when he had mood shifts? But the only way that Buffy could have a mood shift would be to be possessed.
I don't know. Maybe. But this next scene with Cordelia, where Cordelia follows her out of the bronze, is one of my absolute favorite Cordelia scenes.
Oh, it's so good.
It is the one where I first started to like Cordelia and enjoy her in the show.
My only real note for this scene is I love everything about this scene.
It is. It's amazing. Like the whole conversation. And obviously we can't, do the whole conversation, but
Watch
basically
me.
she
No.
tells
We've never really been close, which is nice because I don't really like you that much, but you have on occasion saved the world and stuff, so I'm gonna do you a favor. And this great favor is, I'm gonna give you some advice. Get over it. Excuse me? Whatever's causing the Joan Collins tude, deal with it. Embrace the pain, spank your inner, mop it, whatever. But get over it. Because pretty soon you're not gonna even have the loser friends you've got now. I think it's about time you start minding your own business. It's long past.
I love that that's coming from Cordelia, because I love that I've mentioned before in Out of Mind, Out of Sight, that there's just something that's so amazing about these characters and the way that they interact. And you kind of have these moments here that really make me wish that they would have pushed this relationship a little bit further. Because these two, I think, truly understand each other in a way that, like, Willow and Xander will never really be able to understand Buffy. Cordelia understands. Just because of the nature of the way that they act, the behavior that they have are very similar. And the fact that Cordelia can recognize that Buffy is spiraling and takes the time to be like...
To help her.
Yeah.
To try and help her.
To be like, you've got to set this course right. And again, holy crap, is this foreshadowing so much about Cordelia? Because this is such a Cordelia thing. I mean, the very last episode of Cordelia is her setting Angel back on his path. I mean,
yeah.
God, I love it. I love this moment, and I agree with you. It's a great Cordelia moment.
Buffy walks off, and we watch Cordelia be kidnapped out of the alley and put in a cage, kind of a black room or a cage or something, you can't really tell, in which Miss Calendar is already in and passed out.
So I have locked in basement, question mark, because they descend stairs to drop Cordelia off. So I don't know if we can count this one.
Counts.
Okay, it counts? Cool.
I think it counts. It's kind of a basement. Let's see. It says it's in the factory cellar.
Yes!
In the script book, so it counts.
So Buffy then goes and visits the Master's grave, and it is clearly
Empty.
been freshly dug up. And the panic that she has on her is just a beautiful moment. And then there's this, like, quick flash of the Master, and I love those little moments that are throughout the episode of just the Master is literally haunting Buffy. And just that psychological, it kind of it feels similar to the first, right? Like, she can't escape from this thing that's dead. It's just there all the time and feels like a threatening force. But yeah, it's just a real quick scene, but man, does it add another layer to what Buffy's dealing with all the time, and just the utter panic and fear that she's in because of what happened.
The description in the script book, when it says the Master is right beside her, she spins, no one's there, but she's closer to the edge than ever. She looks back at the grave, shaking and trembling in fear. Which I like that description. She's closer to the edge than ever.
Yeah.
When she finds the bones gone. And then we have Willow and Xander talking to Giles about Buffy possibly being possessed.
And there's a lovely bit of acting by Tony Head where he gets a soda and he takes a drink and then he has nothing but regrets.
Yeah.
Just a nice little moment of levity in the background action. But yeah, Willow is convinced Buffy absolutely has to be possessed. That is the only way that she could be acting like a Bitka.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is a nice little bit of comic relief there.
But Giles actually, like, though he's not as sympathetic as you think he should be, he does hit the nail on the head when he mentions that Buffy did die. Yeah, like that's something that is gonna take time to get over. And yeah, then Buffy walks in and announces that the Master's gone. And this, like, unraveling here, where she's, like, in a mode of panic, and how everybody's just snapping at each other, where she's just like, you know, you didn't tell me that this was possible, and then Willow goes to defend Giles, and then Buffy snaps at Willow, and then Xander snaps at Buffy, and it's just, like, everything spiraling out of control.
Yeah.
I really, as much as I know that you kind of said that you don't like Xander being as aggressive towards Buffy in this episode, this particular moment where it's the instantaneous, like, this is his instinct right here. When somebody attacks Willow, he either goes in defense or attack mode, and, like, it doesn't matter who it is. And Buffy snaps at Willow, and Xander immediately snaps back. No hesitation at all. And
yeah, to defend Willow.
It's just one of those moments that I can't ignore, because it's just, again, that relationship, I think, is so awful and wonderful all at the same time.
Well, and then there's when Buffy first comes in and tells Giles about the Master's bones being gone. To me, this seems like a drastic enough thing, an important enough thing, that she would have called him when she discovered it the night before, or gone to his house maybe to tell him, or like, this doesn't seem like I'll tell him at school tomorrow type thing. Like, this, like, they're always
Buffy can only see Giles at school in this episode.
Well, like, really, does he disappear when it's not school hours or something?
That's how teachers work, right?
Weird.
That's how teachers work.
But he's her watcher, too. And I feel like there should be a way for her to get a hold of him when it's not school. For, you know, vitally important stuff like the Master's bones disappearing.
Yeah.
And then Snyder interrupts them, and they all have to go to class. And Giles and Snyder have a little conversation about Buffy. And it's got some really good comments in it.
Yeah, another great bit of foreshadowing to Buffy's expulsion, which, man, did they drive that home in this episode.
Yeah, they did.
But, oh my god. Again, just give me all of the Snyder and Giles scenes. That's all, like, I would take an entire episode of just that.
And then it's evening, and so the school day is done, and they are in the library researching, and Giles finds something that could mean the people closest to the Master when he died is what they need to bring him back. And Buffy's like, that was me. And a rock smashes through the window, and everyone ducks and kind of screams, and Buffy just catches it. Buffy is so much smoother.
She's
in this
so cool.
Yeah. She catches the rock, and it's got Cordelia's necklace on it, and it says, "Come to the bronze before it opens, or we make her a meal."
I'm just playing Xander's line in my head, and it's making me laugh.
At which Xander says they're going to cook her dinner, all alarmed, which I think is just horrible. It's a horrible pun thing. He almost immediately says, "Pretend I didn't say that," but it's just horrible.
I honestly think that, like, Xander's just, like, has an immediate response that he can't control sometimes.
With no filter.
Yeah, he's just like, his defense mechanism of sarcasm is so, like, cranked up that even in situations like this, it just happens without him realizing it. But
before we continue, so Cordelia was taken last night, and we have now gone through an entire school day. Miss Calendar, Jenny, was taken before Cordelia because she was already in the basement when Cordelia was put in there. So why has no one noticed that these people have disappeared yet? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know that our main characters here would would immediately know. But like Miss Calendar's not at school. Cordelia's not at school. Did her mom and dad just like not notice that she didn't come home the night before? Like, what? I mean, how do people disappear like this so much in Sunnydale and nobody knows?
Does Cordelia fit the trend of like parents who just aren't observant at all and don't like realize that their 9-year-old boy is 9-year-old boy is in a coma in the hospital or something like that?
Yeah. Okay. So Buffy says that she's going to go to the Bronx and save the day, and they argue with her and tell her it's a trap. And she tells them they're not coming, and they basically kind of get in the fight, and she says, I'm going.
Yeah. This whole, like, I can't keep protecting you idea is something that's very... It's kind of a weird thing that Buffy has to wrestle with at a few different points in the series, and it's usually what starts to rip the Scoobies apart and then eventually pulls them back together, because she is stronger with them than she is without them. But there is a certain level of extra stress that comes with having friends when you're in the kind of line of work that Buffy's in. The thing that makes Buffy stand out, the thing that Spike points out later in the series, is that she has friends and family, and that's what makes her strong. That's what makes her like truly a great Slayer. But the temptation to just fully retreat into the Slayer and to completely disconnect from her human side, like her normal life side, has got to be something that tempts her again and again and again, because there's just something that's easier about accepting that if I'm just the Slayer and can completely reject my humanity, then it makes what I have to do easier. And I think that that's a point where she's at here in a lot of ways. Like, this is my fight. This is what I have to continue to do. Like, we see it again and again and again, that in order to do what she has to do, she has to be kind of cold and heartless, and having friends completely like goes against that idea. But she's so very aggressive in this moment and completely pulls away again and leaves without them in this moment of really like the two sides of Buffy wrestling with each other again, and the Slayer's winning right now. She's on her way to the Bronze, and Angel shows up, and she makes a comment about being stalked is not really, a turn on for girls. This back and forth here, I feel amazingly like lays out the entire season.
Yeah.
It's so good. This line that Angel has of "you have to trust someone, you can't do this alone," kind of goes along with what I was just saying, that Buffy is trying to pull away from everybody and to just be the Slayer and not have to deal with any other aspects of her life, because that's just easier for her right now. And the fact that Angel is the one that shows her that, and that at the end of the season we have kind of the inverse of that, where Angelus is saying you are all that's left, right? He says that she's been stripped of her weapons, her friends, her hope, and you take all that away, and what's left? And that's when Buffy replies with me. And it's just a lovely like counterbalance between those two lines of dialogue, that Angel is saying that you need all of this support and stuff like that, and Angelus is trying to turn that and being like, oh, you have nothing, so you're nothing. But the truth is that sometimes just Buffy being the Slayer is enough, because Buffy is that strong, even on her own in that scenario, is still able to take on Angelus. And then Buffy here just leaning into it so hard and just ready to throw down.
Think you can take me?
What?
Oh, come on. I mean, you must have thought about it. What would happen if it ever came down to a fight? You, vampire, me, the Slayer? I mean, you must have wondered. Well, why don't we find out?
I'm not gonna fight you.
Come on. Kick my ass.
God, the kick my ass line is so good.
Yeah. Or she's obviously trying to goad Angel into a fight. I didn't really see this watching it, but reading in the script book, he's supposed to be acting like he wants to fight too.
Oh,
Like, he wants to get
Yeah.
into it with her, and he's having to control himself not to.
I didn't get that at all.
Yeah. And I don't really like that.
No,
interpretation
that
of it,
sounds like a Spike thing, but not an Angel thing. Like,
Yes, but that's what they have-
Spike would want to fight her, because that's just the way Spike processes his feelings.
Yeah, I mean, even at one point it says he growls and steps toward her.
Yeah.
Like, and then he stops controlling himself
Yeah.
and says, "Don't you have somewhere to be?" And I'm glad he didn't act it that way,
Yeah, I'm glad they pulled that back.
because I like it better without that. Like, I want Angel to have a little bit more control over himself, you know. But then they go into the bronze, where there is a girl huddled on her knees with her back to where they just walked in, and she's wearing Cordelia's coat and crying. And Buffy walks in, and just immediately she's like, "That's not Cordelia." And I feel like this is another example of the difference between season 1 Buffy and season 2 Buffy. Because I think season 1 Buffy would like immediately have ran to her, "Are you okay?" You know? And season 2 Buffy just stands there like, "That's not Cordelia."
Well, and I almost wonder, I'll have to watch how she does throughout the rest of the season, because I think there is a shift overall in the way that Buffy acts between the two seasons, but I think a lot of this could also be specific to this episode, because of this idea that we've been discussing of how Buffy's like completely retreating into her Slayer side, and because of that she's so attuned that conversation that like she had in the opening episode with Giles, that she should be able to just know, well, there's a vampire there. She gets in there and she's just like, nope, that's a vampire, that's not Cordelia. Like, she's so in tuned with her Slayer senses and her Slayer abilities that it makes her so much stronger and faster and, you know, better at fighting and everything that we've seen in this episode.
And while I feel like she's not quite so much like Super Slayer in the next few episodes in the rest of the season, it is a marked difference, and it never takes her back to like season 1 Buffy.
Yeah, like, I would be upset if it completely regressed, but I think it does pull back some. And I think we see this again and again, is this idea that sometimes Buffy just retreats into the Slayer side of herself. You kind of see that in the finale of this season. You see it in season 5 some. Like, she just has this ability to turn off parts of herself. And when she does that, she may technically be a better fighter, but she doesn't have as much to live for or as much to motivate her to keep going. And so, like in this scenario, you can mark how good she is at fighting, but there's also something about her that you know isn't going to last the way that she's lasted with friends and family and support systems and that trust and love and respect that she has from those who are closest to her. Yeah, it's an interesting balance that she has to like go back and forth of how much can she turn herself over to this purely Slayer side before she loses a certain edge that she gets from her humanity. And it's something that she talks about with Kendra later in this season. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. But yeah, she knows that it is not Cordelia right off the bat. And Angel makes the comment that it doesn't make sense. There's the bait, where's the hook? And of course it's the old bait and switch, which we know that Buffy always falls for.
Yeah. Well, she realizes it's a trap and, you know, tells Angel to watch the vampire, who's in the script book. It says her name is Tara. So
oh yeah, I saw in the credits at the end, I think, that somebody was casted as Tara, and I'm just like, who's Tara?
yeah, I don't like it either. Buffy says, you know, watch her, don't kill her unless you have to, and takes off back to the library. And while this was happening, we see Willow, Xander, and Giles in the library talking about what just happened. And Willow wanted to follow Buffy. Xander's like, no, we need to stay away. And Giles is still, you know, researching.
Yeah, it's an interesting, like, switch in roles from, like, Prophecy Girl. Prophecy Girl, Xander was all about, we gotta go save Buffy. And here, like, is it the dance that's kind of the turning point where Xander's just like, no, not into this version of Buffy. Not cool. Like there's a pretty extreme shift in the way that you would normally expect Xander to act around Buffy. And it gets even worse as it progresses. But yeah, like normally you would expect Xander to be the first one to volunteer to go and help Buffy.
Giles looks up and his research figures out that it's the people who were physically nearest the master that they need, and says it is a trap. It just isn't for her.
Yeah.
Because they are surrounded by vampires in the library. And then Buffy comes running into the library a little later to find it's been trashed. Obviously, something happened here. There was a fight. And she runs over to Xander as he's struggling to get up and wants to know where the others are, because it's just Xander. And Xander kind of unloads on Buffy, which, okay, well, I think that this... I can understand Xander's mad, especially after he was I don't want to use the word victim because he wasn't really a victim, but it's the only word I can think of, target maybe, of her dance in the bronze. And she kind of used him to make everyone else mad. And I can see where he's mad about that, but I also think that he just has no right here. Because he basically goes off on Buffy, which I don't know what your issues are. I don't care. And Buffy says, well, we have to think, where did they take them? And Xander just says, if they hurt Willow, I'm going to kill you. Okay, first of all, Xander's not going to be able to kill the slave.
Clearly a bit of an empty threat, but a very aggressive one.
How many times has she saved his life by now?
Yeah.
Like, at least half a dozen.
Yeah.
Or saved him from some kind of danger. And it's like, really?
It's really too much. Like,
yeah.
It really, like, they pushed it too far. And there are things about Xander and his way of overreacting that we've seen in the past that I could believe that he would say this, but it's still really kind of uncomfortable watching it. And you really feel like there should have been a discussion in the writer's room being like, maybe there's another way to phrase this. Yeah, because I could buy that in the heat of the moment that Xander would say something like this, but it's a whole nother layer to be like, a writer's room thought that this was a good idea enough to keep it in after several read-throughs, and you know, it's really too far. And like I don't know exactly what it was trying to prove, because everything kind of bounces back from it. Like this is an episode that has a little bit of that reset, not as bad as like season 1, but it's like an intentional reset that the main three kind of choose to be like, listen, we understand that you were going through some stuff and we're just going to move past this kind of stuff. So I appreciate that more, that they kind of acknowledge, yeah, that was a really strange thing, but it's okay now. We know you were going through something. But I don't know what Xander's excuse to be so over the top with a threat like this. And like I'm with you. Like I feel like it's too much. It's too far to really feel like something that Xander would say and not really explore any further, right? I mean, I think that's another thing is like he gets to this point really fast and then it's kind of ignored after that.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, Xander does explain that the people closest when he died are what's needed for the ritual, and then it cuts to Buffy, who is just straight up torturing this vampire.
Oh yeah, we've basically gone torture for information, Buffy.
Oh yeah. Which, does she ever torture anybody else in the run of this series? Like, does she ever, like, we have a lot of torture scenes. I don't know if Buffy ever tortures anybody again.
It's possible she does. I can't remember off the top of my head, but if she hasn't, she comes close.
Yeah. But man, it just feels weird seeing Buffy, even a vampire, torture someone. It's again one of those things to show just how removed she is from herself. But man, that's something that will stick with you. But yeah, and then we kind of cut over to where the ritual's beginning, and we have Buffy, Angel, and Xander, our lovely trio, back again, coming in to try to save the day. And Buffy instructs Angel and Xander to get everybody down while she distracts the vampires. And then there's just this phenomenal line after she's asked how she's going to distract them, where she says,
I'm gonna kill them all. That ought to distract them.
It's real good.
Yeah. I would like to point out here in the script book the names of these vampires that are helping Absalom with this ritual, because we have Absalom, the Anointed One, then we have Vampire Bob, Vampire Jane, and Vampire Walt.
Nice.
And I just love the names for the vampires and thought I would point out that that is what they are called.
So this is when Buffy dusts a vamp as all of them are chanting, just really getting into the ritual of it all. And then she just casually stands there in this great shot. And then Absalom just loses his mind.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he goes crazy. And we get into our big fight where Buffy she basically just kicks vampire butt all over this place. Meanwhile, Angel and Xander are saving the captives, which Absalom sees and yells to stop them. And one of the Vampire Ned, I forgot about him, Vampire Ned peels off and runs up the stairs. Meanwhile, Buffy is still fighting all these other vampires. Angel takes on Vampire Ned up the stairs. And
the names make it so much better. I'm so glad you have that script book.
Yeah. They get the captives down and they start waking up really fast, by the way, I think. But Buffy is still fighting. It's basically a long fight scene. Xander and Willow are sitting there watching Buffy fight. And Giles asks, "Where's Buffy?" And Xander says she's working out her issues. As while Buffy is fighting Vampire Walt, Vampire Bob, and Vampire Jane. As Angel has already killed Vampire Ned.
Aw, Vampire Ned.
Yeah.
It was too soon.
Then Absalom comes out and screams enough and just has the best lines.
Oh, man. It's so good.
The way he talks is just, it's great.
His theatricality is one to rival Spike himself. Like, it's just so... The presence he has.
Your day is done, girl. I'll grind you into a sticky paste and hear you beg before I smash in your face.
So, are you gonna kill me, or are we just making small talk?
Just coming out, bearing that sledgehammer, talking about grinding her into a sticky paste, and you're just like, oh, yeah. That's a beautiful, beautiful visual.
He could have been a recurring character.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then she has vampires rushing in from each side and does this amazing thing with a tiki torch type thing, where she burns one and stakes one at the same time, and it's just awesome.
So a random thing to note is that Absalom is wearing like a medal around his neck, like a medallion, and it appears to dust. So there's that note.
Oops. And then she approaches the table with the master's bones on it, where they were going to do the ritual, and picks up the sledgehammer and just starts smashing the master bones into powder. And you can tell she is out of control, and this is like therapy for her.
Oh, yeah. It is the ultimate, like, untensing of a muscle. Like, Buffy has been, like, just on pins and needles for this entire episode. And then this catharsis that she gets in this moment completely breaks all of that. And she just completely shuts down that hardness and that I'm tougher than all of this, and breaks down crying. And Angel approaches and whispering, it's okay, and she just balls in his arms, and it's so powerful.
And I love this scene with Buffy and Angel that, like I said, he's her safe spot. And she turns around and she lets it loose when he puts his arms around her. I mean, although I do have in my notes, and I actually rewound this to watch this scene one more time, because we see the people on the balcony watching this happen, and I wanted to make sure that I did not miss Jenny seeing this. But it does not show her reaction.
Okay.
So I wanted to see if Jenny saw this, because at this point she would realize it was Buffy.
Yeah.
That was making Angel too happy. But it does not show her reaction.
There's
I made
also-
sure. I wanted
yeah.
to check that.
Yeah. There's also a note that I have with Xander of the being observant, where Willow's like, it's over before the sledgehammer of the bones happens,
Yeah.
and Xander's like, no, it's not. I don't fully know what to read into it, because I think I understood it better in Nightmares, where Xander was the one who got it when Willow didn't. But here, I think, again, it could possibly speak to Xander's own anger, because he clearly has that, and we've seen it manifest in a couple of different ways, and the fact that he kind of understands this catharsis is something that Buffy truly needs, just in the same way that he's like, though she's working out her issues earlier, like here, he understands before it happens that Buffy's got to destroy these bones in order to feel like she's truly moved on from this point in her life. And it's just an interesting note, because there's these moments where Xander's like incredibly observant, and I think it plays into this idea that we get into much later in the series, where Xander talks about how much he sees and how much he just is a witness to all those around him, and that there's something to that causes him to have these moments of amazing clarity in a character that's really kind of a dummy most of the time, but every now and again he has these like surprise moments where you're just like, dang, Xander, look at you being all observant, and that was one of them for me.
And then we skip to the next day. This episode does a lot of skipping to the next day. And we have Cordelia and Jenny talking, and Cordelia's going on and on about her clothes and the stains. And Jenny is just like very deadpan. Yeah. You know,
I feel like Jenny's humor so beautifully counterbalances Cordelia. It's so great. Like, she can mock Cordelia in such a way that Cordelia's just like, yeah, this girl totally agrees with me. And it's just beautiful.
Yeah, and then we have Buffy and Giles having a heart-to-heart talk about how she's going to face her friends.
Giles just trying to be helpful in the worst way ever.
Yeah, it was hardly
Buffy,
the worst mistake you'll ever make.
Lets Buffy know that she's going to really screw up again and again and again, so don't worry about it. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not wrong, but still.
Not helpful. Then she goes to the classroom where Willow and Xander already are, and they say, hey, and Willow's like, we saved you a seat. And they start talking, and it's a little awkward at first and kind of stilted, but then they start talking about what they're going to do that night. And Xander says, well, we could grind our enemies into talcum powder with a sledgehammer, but gosh, we did that last night. And Buffy laughs, and then they laugh, and then they just keep chatting.
Oh, incredible.
And it kind of broke the tension, and we're all friends again.
Incredible line to just transition back into, yeah, all is... This is the weirdest way to say all is forgiven, but that's what that really translates to, and it's so beautifully done. Unfortunately, it's undercut by this awful, like, after-school special music that's playing.
Yeah, I was like, when that started, I was like, okay, we know they're making up. We don't need the violins. Yeah.
And then we cut back to the factory, all of the destruction everywhere, the Master's bones in bits and pieces. And then another favorite scene that I have of the Anointed
definitely.
One. Absolutely just a gem of a scene.
Hate that girl.
He's so cute!
And that is the end of When She Was Bad.
Yeah, a surprisingly, like, uneven episode when it comes to characters. Some characters are really strong. Buffy's really strong. Cordelia's really strong. Angel's really strong. Xander not so much. Willow and Giles, it's kind of just like split all over the place.
Yeah.
But
it was a big step in the Buffy Angel relationship, though.
Oh yeah, did a lot.
Most definitely
did a lot for that. And holy crap, just foreshadowing galore. And you gotta love
so much
that.
foreshadowing.
You gotta love that.
Which and all the foreshadowing that we saw in it, and I've been, this watch through, I've been watching very closely, there was absolutely no foreshadowing of the Jenny Angel situation.
Yeah.
Which leads me to believe that you were most likely right and it was not planned until later.
I believe that's confirmed by Joss Whedon himself. I believe he says that was just kind of retconned in.
Gotcha.
But I'm always curious to see if there's little, like, accidental foreshadowing moments, because we get that a lot just by the nature of how, you know, we overanalyze everything, so eventually we're going to discover something and be like, ooh, for the most part.
Oh, yeah, we overanalyze a little bit.
For the most part, I think with Jenny, there's gonna be, like, a major switch that happens at some point. And I don't know if it's literally surprise that happens or if it's before then, but there's a moment where it feels like she's kind of a different character. It's very jarring, if I remember correctly, if you're really focused in on her through line.
Well, I'm going to see it this time because I'm very focused on Jenny this watch through. I want to see. Yeah.
She's fascinating. We will be back again next week with Some Assembly Required. I'm excited for Some Assembly Required, but I'm just going to tell you right now. School Hard.
Yeah.
School Hard.
Oh, I cannot wait for School Hard. I was actually just flipping through the script book and was like, it's only one episode away.
We'll give Some Assembly Required its due time. But just know, the entire time I'm talking about Some Assembly Required, I'm also going to be thinking in the back of my head, School Hard's next week, School Hard's next week, School Hard's next week.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, season 2, we're started. And we thank you so much for listening. And now we say bye.
Bye. I feel like that was kind of a little negligent. I feel like that was a little negligent on Giles's part. I'm going to use a different word.